Okay, for today's video, we were reviewing the Safari Ltd Kentrosaurus. This is the older, retired green one. There's a new one that's getting released, and I'll mention that that has a big role in why this video is being made right now. So this is going to be a really interesting review because it's almost like I'm getting to review a figure early. Because the new Safari actually is re-releasing this figure in a new paint scheme. So this is a figure that came out a little over 10 years ago and retired very soon. It wasn't out for very long, but they're remaking it in a new color scheme. This isn't the first time Safari's done this. They've done it a few times in the Carnegie line with some of their Allosaurus figures, I can remember, and some of their Brachiosaurus figures, and I think a Brachiosaurus in their regular line too. There's been a few different figures that they've done this for, but this is one of the first times I've done it for one of their, I would say, less popular figures, because I think this one really just retired because it didn't sell very well or something. Whatever it was, this is one of the first times they've done it for a figure like this that is not just a species they've made a ton of or a genus that they've made a ton of. So it's awesome that they're re-releasing the Kentrosaurus in a new color scheme. And it's also will be the first review of a figure that I've had in the collection prior to making this channel. So yeah, this is a figure I've had in the collection for a long, long time. I actually picked this figure up whenever it was in production, so it's been in the collection for a very long time. And every review I'm almost positive, every review I've done on this channel so far has been figures that I've picked up, and you all have seen either the pickup video or the video of me just reviewing the figure as soon as I get it. But like I said, this is the first time that I'm reviewing a figure that has been in the collection, and I could definitely do this again. I did mention, though, out of the figures that I have in the collection already that I could possibly review, I think I mentioned this in a previous collection video, that this was specifically one that I would have considered reviewing. So with the fact of this being a figure that I'd always liked and had in really good condition, that had been retired, and then with the new one being announced, it made the perfect storm to be the first figure that I had in my collection previously to review on the channel. So there's not many reviews out on this figure on YouTube. Since this figure has been retired for a while, it's gotten fairly expensive, and I just don't think it was produced for very long, so it has become a pretty expensive figure, honestly. And I'll briefly explain here how I believe I got this figure. So, there was a little gift shop in Rupp Arena, the place where Kentucky plays basketball. They had a little gift shop that I think is closed down now for a few years, but it was a really awesome little toy, or not a gift shop, like a little toy shop. And they had Safari figures. I remember they had like the big Carnegie display. That's the only place I can remember having the big Carnegie display, like the big mountain rock thing. But they had this figure, and I remember I was debating between this figure and another figure. And then me and my dad actually went into the basketball game. And whenever you go into the game, you can't go back out to the spot where they had like the toy shop. And I never ended up getting either of the figures. But then I remember shortly after that getting a hold of this figure. So I don't remember if my mom or dad ordered it for me after talking about wanting it, or where my dad works, like around the state, he might have just went back in there and picked it up, or maybe I got it the next time I went there. But I remember specifically wanting it there, and then ending up with it very soon. And maybe I actually ended up picking it up while we were there. I'm not for sure exactly how I got my hands on it, but I did end up getting a hold of this figure around that time whenever I saw it at that little toy shop in Rupp Arena. But yeah, now we'll just get into the animal information for Kentrosaurus. So Kentrosaurus is a stegosaur. The main difference between its more famous cousin, Stegosaurus, is Kentrosaurus is smaller, at a little larger than 4 meters. It has 2 large shoulder spikes, which Stegosaurus doesn't have. And also, where Stegosaurus has plates throughout the majority of the body and then tail spikes or spikes right at the end of the tail, Kentrosaurus has plates at the first half of the body and then spikes from the second half of the body, as well as those shoulder spikes. And Kentrosaurus is considered a Stegosauridae member and is usually placed closely to Dawsontrurus. But being in the Stegosauridae family, or it's placed closely to Dawsontrurus on the phylogenetic tree. But being in the Stegosauridae member, it's also related to other Stegosauridae members like Miragaia, as well as Stegosaurus and Dawsontrurus. And Kentrosaurus lived during the late Jurassic in the Tendaguru Formation, where it, in the Tendaguru Formation, which has very similar dinosaurs to the Morrison Formation in the U.S., just with some dinosaurs switched out for some of their cousins, like Kentrosaurus in the place of Stegosaurus, and Giraffatitan in the place of Brachiosaurus. And as far as this figure itself, obviously it's pretty small. I mean, my hands aren't extremely big or anything, and it can fit easily, like in the palm of my hand. So yeah, this figure is obviously pretty small, which I could see being an issue for some people, but this kind of makes it better for some collectors in other aspects. It makes it not take up much space on the shelf and puts it in around the 140 scale. So I believe it at least is around the 140 scale. That's what I've seen some people say it is. So if you are collecting figures in that scale, it works really well, like for the majority of the Carnegie collection being in that 140 scale. And even though this is a very small figure, it's super highly detailed. The color is obviously this like light greenish color, like a brownish green, with like the bright green spike, or this bright green plates. So it's a very naturalistic color scheme. But the new one has the bright blues and stuff, which I actually do prefer this old one compared to the new one. However, I do think they fit very well as like a sexually dimorphic pair, with obviously this being like the duller colored female and that one serving as the brighter colored sexually dimorphic male. And as far as inaccuracies, the only one that I'm even aware of on this figure is the tip of the tail, which I'll kind of explain. It's sort of an inaccuracy, sort of not, and I'll explain that right now. So, this figure almost looks like it has a spike at the tip of its tail, which Kentrosaurus would not have a spike at the tip of its tail. But I think this might actually just be the tail extended, but it's just painted the color of the tail spikes, because as you can see, it like just kind of goes on with the tail, not like how the rest of the spikes do. So I think that might actually just be the tail, but it's just the color of the spikes. So really, it's not even that big of an inaccuracy. It just looks like an inaccuracy. And the only other Kentrosaurus figure I have in my collection to compare this to is surprisingly actually smaller, and it's the Jurassic World Minis Kentrosaurus. But this also gives you an idea of just how small this figure is, because I mean, this is a mini figure and it's not that much bigger than it. And obviously, I really do prefer the Safari figure. I mean, while I do like these Jurassic World Minis, a Jurassic World Mini compared to a Safari Ltd figure is not a fair fight, at least not for me comparing them. And I did also want to compare this to one other figure, the Safari Ltd Nigersaurus, which also I think would scale about to this size with this figure. But the reason I wanted to compare these two figures is I did a poll between these two figures to see which of these two you wanted to see the video first, because I mentioned that I had like a random Safari Ltd figure, and that was a sauropod, or if you all wanted to see the Kentrosaurus video first, and you all actually voted for the random sauropod video, so that was the Nigersaurus. But like I said, the Kentrosaurus would be the very next video, so that's why this video comes out after. And I did receive, so this is why I had a poll to begin with between these two videos. So I ordered the Nigersaurus about a week earlier, maybe a little less actually, because it shipped pretty fast, but I received like the order notification that it arrived at my house the same day that Safari announced the new Kentrosaurus. So I was like, which of these videos should I do first? And then I decided I'll just do a poll and let you all decide. And the sauropod video won, so that's why the Nigersaurus video came out first. But yeah, love both of these figures. Such awesome, great Safari Ltd figures that I really love both of. And unfortunately, I'll mention the featured documentaries. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of any documentaries that contain Kentrosaurus, which is surprising considering Kentrosaurus, I believe, by most people would be considered the most popular stegosaur not named Stegosaurus. And now I guess we'll get into like the featured figures and stuff. So obviously, this is the little Safari Ltd Kentrosaurus, an awesome little figure. And that new Kentrosaurus figure, I believe, is like this exact figure, just in a different paint scheme. I'll put an image of it at the end, and I'll put a link to the thing, and I'll explain a little bit more about that at the end. But yeah, this is the Safari Ltd Kentrosaurus. This is the Safari Ltd Baby Brachiosaurus. This is the Safari Ltd, or not Safari Ltd, Jurassic World Mini Kentrosaurus. The Pterobibitat Dawsontrurus. The PNSO Miragaia. which I have reviewed actually. The Miragaia I have reviewed on the channel, so if you want to see that video, I'll put a link to it. The Safari Ltd Stegosaurus, and finally the Safari Ltd Nigersaurus, which I also literally reviewed on this channel, the video before this. So yeah, I'll put in conclusion, I really love this figure, and I'm very happy more people will be able to get it with the re-release in the new paint color scheme. And I actually plan on getting that figure myself. As I mentioned before, I think it'll work very well as a sexually dimorphic male to pair with this one, and that's exactly what I'm getting it for. So if you like this figure, I'd probably just recommend waiting and just getting that new one whenever it does release. But if you really, really prefer this color scheme, which I honestly think a few people might actually prefer it, you can always try to hunt down this figure on eBay and Mercari. At the time of recording this video, there is one that was up for around $60, but it might not be up at the time of recording this video because this video is going to be recorded a few weeks in advance. And I will put a link up to the new Kentrosaurus in the description, the new one up on Safari Ltd's website. So if you want, you can order off Safari when it gets in stock. And considering I will have this video recorded, considering I'm recording this video a few weeks in advance, whenever this video does come up, that figure might be in stock already. So hopefully you all can get it then. But like I said, if you all want to get the older one, you can definitely try to hunt it down on eBay or Mercari, but it's probably not going to be cheap. So you might just be better off just to wait for this one in the new color scheme to get in stock. But it might be in stock by the time this video is out. So I hope you all enjoy this video. And here I will insert the image of the Kentrosaurus. But once again, thank you all so much for watching. And if you do end up ordering that Kentrosaurus, if you would mention in your notes thing on the order, if you would mention that Jurassic Theropods Now sent you, that would be very much appreciated. I don't have a promo code or anything at Safari. Maybe I could get that in the future someday. But if you all do make it aware that my video helped you end up with that figure, that would help out the channel a ton. So once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'm out. And now I will insert that image of the new Kentrosaurus so you can see for yourself if you want to get that new figure.